Welcome to Oregon Voters Digest, the program that brings forward the social and political issues that are important to people living here in the Pacific Northwest. And now, your host, Bruce Broussard.
Hey, welcome aboard, folks. As you note, we're on podcast now. This is not the studio per se. The whole idea is that I wanted to make sure that we needed to be a part and parts of the dialogue here in the state of Oregon and in the state of Washington, for that matter. As you can see the sign in the background, it says Bruce Broussard for mayor. Let's talk. I mean, gee whiz, I'm not in the studio right now, but guess what? We are going to be in the studio. This will be aired, if you will, on the same time on Sunday on Oregon Voter Digest on Comcast, okay? And then next you're going to see this on YouTube like you normally do. Nothing changes. It's just that the studio has changed. I'm sitting up at my home here in a little room, but the bottom line, we're there. The staff, if you will, or the producers of the piece, they're sitting in the background and they're controlling the deal. And then as far as the guest is concerned, you won't be physically seeing that person right next to me talking or whatever. You're going to be seeing them on that podcast to a certain degree. But all in that is you got the photo of myself at this point in time. You're going to have the photo of the guest, and we're going to talk about the subject matter. That's what matters. That's what's matter, the subject matter. And as a result of that, here we are kicking right in the midst, if you will, of this coronavirus thing. First thing I thought about Corona. What are you talking about? I know I do not drink that stuff. I'm a bourbon drinker normally, but I don't do that kind of stuff. But the fact of the matter is that we've been hit with and I need not tell you what it's all about. So it's impacted all of you. I mean, between the national news, CNN and Fox, you got that piece, and then just the mere fact you've got our own governor coming out saying, "Hey, you can't leave home. You got to get the kids out of school if you got kids and whatever." I mean, we're in a total mess. But what I'm bringing to you today is that I'm bringing you our first show. This is our first show, so consequently, I'm going to be sort of educating you as to why we're doing what we're doing. But at the same time, we still got to get to the meat of the matter. And what I mean by that is this: when you're leaving that job, especially the male component, and in most cases, male component and women component, the fact of the matter is you got to pay rent. That's the name of the game. If you live in these United States, you got to pay rent. What does that mean? What does that mean? These taxes that you hear, and this, that, and the other. My point is that you got bills that you've got to pay, but you got to pay rent just like you're paying real estate taxes and all this other good stuff and whatever. So, and then again, when you hear things like budgets, you got people that are representing us down there in the legislature, on wherever you are, you got to legislate, you got representation, the election. That's what that's all about. And the fact of the matter is, some people are supposed to have background along that particular line. So the name of the game is that we're going to go through a course, if you will, kind of pre-history aspect of it, and kind of just slightly get you to understand why this election time period is so important. It is so important. In fact, even on my end, running for mayor, there are 19 people running for mayor of the city of Portland. Imagine, 19 period people. And the guy who's sitting in the seat ran before that. There were 20 people that were running for mayor. And you would think that now that this person is sitting in the seat, his name is Ted Wheeler, there are 19 people running against him, including himself. How about that? 19 people running for mayor of the city of Portland. I would have thought if the guy had done a good job, there would only been maybe he would have no opposition. Nobody would. He would just a shoe-in. But no, 19 people, including myself, for that matter. Old jarhead Marine type of. But the bottom line is that these are some very serious times, and we're looking for good leadership aspect of it. And what better way to do that than say, okay, fine, let's start off with the budget. What is the definition of a budget? You gotta pay the bill. You gotta pay the bill. And what we do, I've interviewed some folks, but there's only one person around in the Vanport arena, and you're very familiar with the Vanport arena. Remember Vancouver, Portland? For those of you young old timers like myself, basically were around during that particular time. Vancouver and Portland, Oregon, was probably the largest city in the state of Oregon, Washington. Okay, got me? And the largest city, and right across the bridge, but that point is called Vanport. So I basically reached out to, guess what? Our local politician, who happened to be the majority chair of the let's see, it was representative, right? Yeah, House member. She's a Democrat, if you will, okay? And I'm talking about Tina Kotek. But anyway, I couldn't get Tina Kotek. So the bottom line, I went on Washington side, was very familiar with the terrain and the area and whatever. And guess what? I came up with John Lee. Oh my God, this guy is sharp. He knows his business. And I tell you, he gets to the spot right off the bat. And that's why he's so active and he's got good background because he can fly to that spot overnight. I mean, he can get right down in the middle of any legislature, anytime whatsoever. He's there. He's there. No, but anyway, but in all due respect, this guy, besides being a good friend, is very knowledgeable, if you will, of what's going on around. And he understands that definition. So what he's going to do, he's going to get in and he's going to share with us basically what does that mean? That first criteria. Why are you paying tax? Why are you paying taxes? Why are you working for someone who has to pay taxes? Okay? And you think about police, you think about all these different services we're having. Guess what? And guess what? Those are the recipients, but then they're paying taxes. So just stick with me. Just stick. Listen, this is the first shot. So what we're going to do is that I'm giving you that front part aspect of it, and then slowly but surely we're going to get down to Norm. Okay? And I might add, is the guy I'm getting ready to introduce you because he's the first. He's going to be the first. The guy, he's going to be back because he's got many things that we're going to be able to talk about, and he's easy. He can translate me with no problem. No problem. So he's going to be doing the majority of the talking. I've done my fair share on the front end this time around. Okay. Now, so that's I'm laying that out to you. You got that from it. So let's just bring John up. John, how you doing, guy?
Bruce, great to see you, buddy. And
Awesome. Awesome. Well, you just got back from a trip. I'm very familiar with the deal. And then they bumped you. Somebody bumped you. Must have been some jarhead helicopter pilot, if you will, or something like that. I might add to the John also is former military also too. And as you can see, I've got my NOM hat on aspect of it. And trust me, if there's any leadership, that's where I had to pull from that particular lot. So John, tell you what we want to do, we want to lead off to that article, that brilliant article you had in the local Camas newspaper or the Washington, Oregon newspaper. And I thought that was awesome. And when I started thinking about the budget aspect of it, and I said, let me see if I can get that. Well, as you can see now, I'm getting there, and there it is right there. Okay, and this was basically an opinion piece that you did in regards to cutting costs due to declining taxpayer revenue. That was the essence of it. Cutting costs due to declining taxpayer revenue. People that are paying their fair share to keep the lights on here in the state of Oregon and Washington, but more particularly in Danforth, okay? Got me? And John wrote a piece, and this is basically what we're going to do. We're going to let him talk about this piece. Taxpayer money going to government is dropping significantly. What are our elected leaders doing in response? Okay? You know, they put that front piece on that way, but guess what? Still have to translate it. Everybody has to eat, but everybody has to pay rent. You have to pay rent. Once you get that Social Security card, you got to pay rent. Okay? So with that, I'm going to bring John on the table here. First off, we're going to give him a couple minutes to kind of share a little bit about his background and who he is, and I already know about his smiling face. Don't let him get me on you on that point. Trust me, he's sharp. That's why I'm here. I'm going to let him do the majority of the talking, and we're going to get right down to, again, here I go again, taxpayer money going to the government is dropping significantly. What are our elected leaders doing in response? Look at that. Yeah, to the government. Who's the government? Of the people, by the people, and for the people. Have you heard that before? Those are you. That's you. And these corporate leaders are looking at this too. We got to find out some way to pay their rent also too. So that's a good start. So John, you got to start. First thing, why don't you just kind of just share with them a little bit about your background and maybe how you met me at the same time. Okay? Give it up. Go on, John. Talk to us.
Bruce, you're a good man. Thank you, my friend. I'm
Thank you.
delighted and honored to do what a lot of us are learning about in this era of coronavirus. We're learning how to communicate using the internet, new tools. So we're using Zoom as a means of communicating and sharing with people while you and I and others are socially isolating.
Yes.
So it's fun and it's an honor to tie in with you, buddy. And so as we watched, starting at the national level, our president, and then here in our states in Oregon and Washington, our governors slow down, stop schools, and ultimately issue emergency orders that told people, please stay at home. Work from home if you can, and if you can't, you have to be an essential worker and go to work. What we've obviously seen is some lucky people are able to comfortably work from home. Our teachers have been busting their butts trying to figure out how to use tools like this to teach their kids,
Right,
and
you're right.
certain things. But obviously, our restaurants, our gyms, all social venues, movie theaters, all kind of recreational things are shut down, and those poor businesses are on the verge of going out of business. A lot of people are unemployed, and ultimately, with people unemployed, there is one level an increased demand for government services, but the flip side of that is there's a whole lot less revenue for the government to have to
Right.
meet services. And in reality, the average citizen doesn't care about 85 or 90% of what government does when they're unemployed.
Right.
You know, they're looking to put food on the table and keep a roof over their head, and everything else is extra unless it impacts their health, and their health becomes number one. But so I started digging into, in late March, what's the economic impact? I've never seen so many people become unemployed so fast.
Mm.
And in the history of our country, those of us that are gray haired and old, we don't remember the Great Depression. Now, maybe our parents had to struggle through it, but you and I remember the Great Recession here after 9/11 and all of that. But that was a 3-year period where the second largest number of Americans got laid off over a 3-year period. What we have unbelievably seen now is, in the course of 1 month, the same number of people laid off that happened over 3 years in just 1 month. And so I've got a graphic here, Steve, if you can throw that up for our viewers to see. And what this does is it goes back, half a century, and it will show unemployment rate.
Okay.
And
There you go.
so if you look at this and it's popping up and down and the economy's good and it's bad and things get better and all of that, and ultimately you sit here and you see 2000, 2010, and all of a sudden, bammo, 2020, and look at that. And that is within 1 month how we have eclipsed the unemployment of our fellow Americans at an unheard of, unrecorded pace in the history of our country. So it's just an amazing, telling graphic that says, oh my gosh. So number one, all of those people are unemployed. They're looking to get unemployment benefits and to figure out how to pay their rent, pay food. They're stuck at home. There aren't other jobs that they can go beat the bushes to get. And so clearly huge issues, huge challenges there for mom and pop. And so what are you and I doing? What is the average American citizen doing, let alone the folks here in the Portland area? We're all tightening our belt. We're cutting back our spending, because if we're lucky enough to still be working, we're wondering, am I going to be next to get unemployed? Am I going to be in the chopping axe because my company's losing revenue? I'm in the airline industry. At the airlines, we have cut back between 85 and 90% of all of our flying, because everybody's staying home like the president and the governors are asking, so almost nobody's on airplanes. And so we went from the best profits we've seen to now it's going to be a bloodbath. So I'm tightening my belt. A lot of other people in regular jobs, the construction industry, generally speaking, in Washington state, they're not allowing home construction or private construction to continue. So all those construction workers are laid off. In Oregon, delightfully, the private construction is still allowed to continue. So that's one sector of the economy that Governor Brown is allowed to continue. So those people aren't faced at this point with layoffs.
Mhm.
But in the grand scheme, if people are working, if they're making great money, they're looking to buy a house or do a remodel or to upgrade or fix. You and I know that with this number of people laid off, the amount of demand for new housing, for remodeling and whatnot, it's going to collapse. In fact, I saw one piece earlier today that said between 40 and 60% of the construction activity they expect to come to an end by the end of the year in terms of just the numbers of new home starts and things. And so at the end of the day, in terms of the economics of this, each of our states gets revenue from us, the working people, as taxes. And in Oregon, overwhelmingly, the lion's share of the revenue Oregon gets is from income taxes. And I found a great graphic. Steve, if you can throw that next one up. And it shows a pie chart of revenue for the state of Oregon and where it comes from for people. And what we're looking at in Oregon, because they are so heavily reliant on income taxes, over 87% of Oregon's revenue comes from personal income taxes. Well, guess what happens when people are unemployed? They're not earning income, so they're not paying taxes to the state. So that clearly means that at some point, there's going to be a huge drop in revenue to the state of Oregon. And so how can the state pay for the services that it needs to pay if 87% of their revenue comes from income taxes?
Just a quick note, John. As you know, when you say income tax, you're talking about basically the state of Oregon saying, okay, fine, you've got to pay your fair share of rent, right? The lights in the roadway, all that other good stuff. I just want to throw that out. The only person that's not paying income tax at this point in time, their rent at this point, are the kids. Because once they get hungry, they run to that table and say, where is the food? Where is the food? Okay, okay. So I just wanted to throw that in there just as a little answer. Okay, going on.
No, and that's spot on. And so that's what mom and dad are worried about at home, is how are they going to keep a roof over their head and feed their kids? And if they're lucky enough to be working, the state of Oregon has basically a flat income tax. With very few exceptions, you're paying 10% to the state, and therefore that's going, well, the people, if you're unemployed, if you've got 10, 15, 20% unemployment, that's 10 to 15 to 20% of your population no longer paying income to the state. And it's the opposite side of that is Washington State. And again, we are two communities separated by a river, but we have very different revenue streams,
Right.
Oregon versus Washington. In Washington State, we do not have an income tax, but property taxes and sales taxes are the biggest bulk of our revenue. And so in Washington State, about 45%, Steve, if you can throw this up, just as comparison, of the state revenue comes from sales taxes. And so the concept is when we're locked at home, we're not out shopping. If we go to a restaurant to eat instead of eating at home, there's a sales tax added to it. You know, you go to the movie theater, you go to a sports game, there's everything has that sales tax component. And so in Washington, 46% comes from our main retail sales tax and use tax. Another 17% comes from what they call the B&O, business and occupation tax. And that's basically a gross receipts tax for every business. It's not based on their profit. It's every dollar that comes in, they give a piece of that to the state of Washington. And so if you add the 46 and the 17, you're up almost 2/3 of the state revenue comes from either sales tax or the B&O tax. So that's good, Steve, thanks. And so if you've got people that are unemployed, they're not going to Home Depot and buying stuff. They're not buying a new car. They're not spending money that generates those sales taxes, coupled with a lot of those restaurants, a lot of the small businesses, the gyms, the hair salons, all those things, they're ultimately looking at going out of business. They've laid off people. Well, when there's no longer a business, they're not paying the B&O taxes to the state. And so the macro part of what I looked at was clearly revenues to both Oregon and Washington to our government's going to decline.
Right.
And how exactly it manifests it, how it gets paid to the state, all of those things will vary. But you and I know the government's going to have less. And therefore, the bulk of my piece was, please, we are tightening our belts at home. The average worker, if they're still working, is tightening it because they're afraid they might get laid off. And God knows all those poor people that are unemployed now, waiting to see if they can get unemployment from the state, which is another whole topic, buddy. They're just waiting, trying to figure out how can they pay the rent, how can they put food on the table.
Hold on, John. I was just going to make a little quickie note that I noticed I picked up the Tribune, one of the last lasting newspaper, if you will, in Portland here, or Oregon, the way where basically they're still a newsstand, but the rest of them are out of business, if you know what I'm saying.
Yep.
You got me? And they're tightening up their belt aspect of it. But I noticed there was one article there that hopefully I want you to look into, and we need to bring up to the table, and that was the article of the that was the June, March, April, yeah, okay, Wednesday, April the 15th. I want you to check that out a little later on. Wyden, you're very familiar with Senator Wyden here in Oregon. Wyden calls for major overhaul of 1930s unemployment program. Very interesting piece. Please put that on your list, if you will. You want to just check it out, okay? You got me? And again, we're at that point in time, folks. And I want John to continue on aspect of it. But just some little notes, if you will. Remember, I started off by saying, hey, when you get that Social Security card, it's not just something to get into the movies. It's something that when you work for anybody, I mean, just like my producer back there in the background putting this stuff on, when he gets his yards cut up there in Portland, what does he do? He said, well, look, I got to write a receipt for this stuff. And he reports it. He reports it to the bank. Hey, because he puts that on his tax returns when he's putting his tax together to try to cut that darn rent bill, if you will. But my point is that this is a very important topic, and the reason why I'm saying I want to remind you again, we've got an election time going on right now. I mean, everything's on the front page. Things like the whole issue of pandemic, Portland style. We've got photos of people sitting in the park and 6 feet away and all this other good stuff. And the construction worker now, here's a construction worker. Here's another, the business Tribune in the business section of the newspaper talking about contracting some of the work they can't do because they got to be apart 6 feet away or whatever. And these are taxpayers. So you get rid of several of them. You delay the job. The person who's paying for the building is saying, I got so much time, if you will. And then he's asked for overtime. The union's going to come in and say, hey, this guy's working, now he's working 16 hours a day or 12 hours a day, and he wants a pay raise. And the guy said, how am I going to get it? So we're in a very confused state. So it's so important, and I'm bringing this point up because we got this election going on. It's so important that whoever is filed to run for office have some background as to what this all means, because that's the only way we're going to get a solution. If it's just about basically looking at CNN and Fox and jumping on the president, won't even call him the president, or won't wear a tie with red stars and stripes, or won't allow anybody to say, you have to understand, we're from old school. And I want you, for those viewers, we're from old school. We went through that. We went through those depressions. We saw it. We didn't know exactly what it meant. But because mom and dad were older, they were dealing with it. They cut back. They wouldn't buy you an extra pair of shoes, or you might go down to the local Salvation Army or something and pick them up. They say, there it is, son. Well, honey, this is all we got, but you got shoes to go to school. And so we didn't know that. And when we went to that table, where is the food, Mom? Might throw out a few beans, but hey, we got filled up and then we went outside and played, come back and do it all over again. So I just want to make sure that you understand the importance of the time we're living in. And the points that John was saying, and he's going to be talking about this a bit more, if you will, in this piece. What he educated you about this. So look at it twice. Tell your friends and your buddies and whatever. And you can even respond to John by basically just, hey, just giving me a call or sending us a note, if you will, just respond to us. You can see this piece. Say, hey, look, Bruce, these are some of the questions that I would like to ask to John or whatever. And we'll give you the address. We got all this stuff. That'll all be there. But it's very, very important that leadership right now, I mean, it's kind of at a premium. We need the best leadership we can get. So if we got 19 people running for mayor, and this one guy, he's got 19 people. We need a new mayor. Either he's going to have to just rejuvenate as a Superman or whatever. But whoever's going to lead the city of Portland and or even Vancouver and or the state of Oregon and or the state of Washington got to definitely have that together because they're being paid now to put this piece together. Am I right, Don? Talk to me.
Absolutely, buddy. So there's a host of things. One of my thoughts on this one, and I think we need to take a break so that people can go get their coffee and all of that.
Sounds great. Sounds great.
But one of my closing thoughts, I just recently looked at the unemployment rate in different sectors in Washington state, and amongst government workers, the unemployment rate is less than 1%. And so that's part of where I'm coming. Not that I want to wish anybody get unemployed, but ultimately it's you and me that pay the taxes that are supporting them. And if 20 or 30% of the construction industry is laid off, and if 50 or 60% of the restaurant and the entertainment industry is laid off, it's like, hey, clearly the government ought to be sharing the burden, tightening their belt, and the biggest cost of that's people. I mean, I've got family that are teachers, and yet in Washington state, over 40% of the money we spend on education does not go into the classroom. Well, you know what? Those teachers are doing amazing things teaching from home. They don't need a whole bureaucracy. That's an area that I think the government could trim. There's a whole lot of licensing bureaus and a whole lot of things that, they could cut back now that are not essential. But anyway, we'll get into that. So I'll give you the cue back, buddy, and you can tee up your coffee break and stretch, and then we'll set up another round.
Okay, well, I tell you what, and I want them to remember that when you do come back on, I want Don to get into basically, you got several taxes. When a lot of times when you mention government taxes, you're thinking about the IRS, if you will, and you're filling out that form is going to government, if you will. And everybody attacks the government piece. But you got state taxes, you got city taxes, you got county taxes, and he's going to go through that a little bit. Hey, you got to pay wherever you are, trust me. And that's what it's all about. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back. Welcome back, folks, to coronavirus stopping the whole deal. Trust me, we got a very serious problem. And if you missed the first part of the show, I would suggest very strongly that you go down to Oregon Voters Digest. Oregon Voters Digest, you can look it on YouTube anytime you want to. You can look at it at YouTube or any other streaming devices. But the fact of the matter is, you need to see that first part of the show. It was sort of an introductory type thing. We talked a little bit about that because now we're on podcast. I'm doing these shows now at home, and my guests, in most cases, they're at their home or elsewhere, whatever. And basically the people who are running the show are basically at their home. So this is really neat. It's on the Zoom, and so consequently, this is really it's well needed. Let's put it that way. I just happened to, at this point in time, to be running for office of all things to do at this time in my life to run for office. But with 19 people in the city of Portland running for the mayor of the city of Portland, and we got some young guy sitting up there, millionaire type, with a silver spoon in his mouth. You heard that before in Texas. I know you heard it. Well, I'll tell you about that later on. But the fact of that is, the guy is still as one would say, is an over-wrinkled gunnery who was very familiar with the grinder in boot camp. In all due respect, I had to go through boot camp, and he's still going through boot camp. But we can't afford, if you will, any more boot camp. If not that, he's going to really come up with some ideas for me. Or better yet, he's going to have to come on the show. He's going to have to come on the show here at the Oregon Voters Digest, and a guy like myself and the guy who really understands figures, understand the young man Wheeler supposedly come from a figure background. But trust me, I'll tell you what, I'll put Don Lee, my guest that's on this time around, any day of the week to have a debate. Have a debate with another money guy. Okay, trust me. Former military aspect of worked all his life. He worked his butt off for that matter. But the fact of the matter is, he's very articulate along that line. They're carrying, I mean, USA all the way, the whole 9 yards. And you know, as we get older, we're all considered to be conservatives. We're all conservatives. There's no such thing as anybody over 75 years old. Now, Don's not there yet. He's about 2 years older than I am. He's 60. He's 67, and I'm 65. We'll keep it in that range. But anyway, I'm not going to go any further. Don's going to whip me up anyway. But anyway, just a little fun, little lightness, if you will. But these are some very serious time. And so I'm going to bring Don back on, and we're going to go right back where we started, where we ended up at, and we're going to give you about another 20 minutes of our time. And then after that, trust me, I want you to be there. Tell your friends about it. Again, like I said, you can go to YouTube and watch it anytime, 24/7 on YouTube on the Oregon Voter Digest. Oregon Voter Digest YouTube. See it anytime you want to. And if you got Comcast, if you're able to pay the bills now, because you got to pay the bill to watch me in Comcast. The YouTube is a different ballgame. So that's why it was so important for us to get this podcast. And we want to thank Zoom for giving us the opportunity to do that. And if you're hacking, if anybody's trying to hack the show and whatever, please tell them too, because there's somebody that might be a vote, but you know they're still paying taxes. Anybody that's hacking, you know, and I might make another point, John, before we leave. I mean, really, it's really getting bad, folks. Trust me. And when you're talking about the budget, everybody who has a Social Security card, a tax card, and they know where you are. You know, it's getting so bad. I mean, even the ladies of the nights are kind of, they're carrying the automatic, put the deal in it so they can record that deal. See, you got to pay. And so everybody's paying, if you will, and they're having a tough time. I've never seen so many women of the night, if you will, well, the ladies of the night or whatever, you know, on you know, that are on the Facebook pages aspect of it. Hard to get rid of, but I'm inviting them all because they're being hit by the budgetary too, because now their patrons, if you will, are having problems paying that bill. So you know, again, like I said, I'm making a little light of it, but this is serious business. All of us, we're all here, and it's going to take us all together to really resolve this situation that we're in at this point in time. Well, I think I've said enough. John, are you still there? Do you still want to be with me? Are you at this point in time? He says, "Hey, buddy," but trust me.
Always happy to be with you, and we have so many neat things and wonderful experiences in common.
Yes.
Our joint military service. You went the much tougher route as a Marine, my friend, but as always, thank you for your service. And you know,
Thank you, John.
we were talking earlier just about how so many people are unemployed, and at the end of the day, people want to get back to work. And one of the challenges that we see when we read the newspaper is that from a certain perspective at the federal level, but definitely in the states, you have a governor or elected leaders making a one-size-fits-all solution, ordering everybody to do things or to not do certain things. And that creates hardships unnecessarily. So I read a piece earlier today that was amazing. And it talked about nationally, 52% of all the deaths that have occurred due to the coronavirus have come from the New York area and the New York City area specifically, out of all the deaths all around the country. Unbelievable. And of course, incredibly heartbreaking for all those people in the New York City area. But the author of this piece then said, the entire country is shut down.
Mhm.
If 52% of the
Wow.
deaths nationally had occurred in Montana, would New York City shut down?
Yeah.
I mean, of course, the answer is no. In fact, the people in New York City probably wouldn't even know that the virus and that the health problem and the scare was happening in Montana. And so part of what we as Americans have learned in this is that in the high urban areas, there are huge problems. And in New York City, it's probably the densest living area in our country, with almost everybody riding the subways, which becomes the mass transit becomes a mean to transmit the virus to others. And they live in real small houses. They're stacked on top of each other and all of that. And horrifically, they are dealing with this. But yet we've got what I call flyover country. When I fly coast to coast in my airplane, there is infinitely more wide open spaces. Well, why should those businesses be shut down in flyover country, in those rural areas? And bringing this back home to Oregon, I looked on the Oregonian this morning. There are 5 counties in the state of Oregon that have 0 cases of coronavirus.
Yep.
Why should those people be shut down? Why should those
Exactly.
people be restricted to stay at home? And of course, if you broaden it a little bit and say, okay, if you've got 10 or less cases, you can still be safe, be cautious, be wary of the social distancing, but they could still be working. They could be productive Americans instead of waiting for unemployment and being on the unemployed line. They could be contributing, which would be helping the governments get money to provide the services and all of that. And so that was just an amazing juxtaposition for sadly, because New York City has to shut down, there's a different side of the rest of America.
Yep.
And we don't necessarily need to shut down. In fact, another aspect of this, here we have the governors of Oregon and Washington and California all coming together,
Yes.
signing a pact. We are all going to decide how to do this and what fixes our states. Well, the reality is Oregon and Washington are different than California, both rural and urban. Here in Oregon and Washington, the overwhelming largest part of our people and the population live on the I-5 corridor. You know, Portland, Vancouver, Clark County area, the greater Portland metro area, 2.5 million people. Then you've got another population area down Eugene and the Salem area and all that. And then the rest is pretty rural. Well, the governor doesn't need a one size fits all. She in Oregon could let a lot of those people back to work. And just with the advisory of, hey, socially distance.
How does that relate to the share with them how that relates to the budget in just basic terms? Like you said, more people are going to be working, and so consequently, not closer to foreclosure, right?
Exactly right. And while the larger numbers impacted are here in the Portland metro area, right. Ted Wheeler and all of that, the flip side is if you've got 20% of the state population that could be working, right, that by the governor's order isn't, those are people that are not contributing. They're not earning, and therefore they're not going to pay the income tax. And so that's one aspect of it. It was interesting. I read that Ted Wheeler had gone and announced some cuts, and he was one of the few government agencies in the Portland metro area to actually announce cuts. Not that they're not having conversations about it on city councils, but he announced it. But the only cuts that he made to the Portland budget was temporary part-time workers. There was no meat, if you will, in seriously trimming. And what I never saw was what percentage of the city's budget was that? Because you know the revenue's going to drop probably double digit for the city of Portland.
Who was in the cut? It's my understanding the union members weren't asked to contribute to the cut.
Yeah, and it was the non-union members, and that can get into politics, good, bad, and other. there on who they protect. But at the end of the day, we know the revenue's not going to be there. And therefore, if he trims back now, the cuts might be less bad later on. Whereas if they blow whatever cash reserves they've got now and don't make any cuts, they're going to blow through that a whole lot faster. And the pain and punishment's going to be a whole lot worse.
Well, I was trying to be nice about the idea of the union. See, realistically, I'm sure that I knew some union buddies that I called on the deal and said, Bruce, we would have done this. And he just basically just threw it out on the table. Bruce, you got to remember, you're running against this guy. He's trying to get our vote. He's trying to get the union vote. So consequently, he wouldn't cut. But in all due respect, the deal will be once he gets back in, then guess what? Hey, everybody comes back to the table again, okay? All right? But I thought I'd share that, okay? But like I said, we're all in this together. We're all in this together. I mean, in all due respect, to those folks who are going to be laid off, being asked for the cut, fortunately, luckily, they're not basically being unemployed and just trying to get another check on the outside. The fact of the matter is, they should do the same thing. That's all I'm saying, okay?
No, that's spot on, buddy. And we are all in this together. And there's so many different aspects that go into this. And you alluded to earlier, there's a variety of taxes. I, of course, highlighted the income tax as the overwhelming big chunk of money for Oregon. But there's another part of that, and that's property taxes. And if you own a house, or if you rent a house, or if you rent an apartment, you are paying those property taxes. And one of the tough realities is property taxes have been skyrocketing year after year. And the city of Portland adds on a little something here and a little something there, and Multnomah County adds something on. Then Portland Metro, Portland Metro's talking a $7 billion bond that they want businesses and property owners to sign on to for transportation. And it's like, are you crazy? The people are already have too much property tax. The property tax raises the cost of their mortgage, or it raises the cost of their rent. So they're paying it. And those people that are unemployed, it just means they're going to be in even worse shape here a whole lot sooner because their rent's higher because of the taxes, or their mortgage is higher because of the taxes. So we've got to find a way to help those people. And in the ideal world, that means trimming down the size of government to what it ought to be on a day-to-day basis. And right now, with so many people not working, we ought to be trimming it down a whole lot, because it's going to be an ugly bloodbath here when at the end of the year, the city of Portland says, oh, our revenues are down 30%.
Yep.
Our revenues are down 40%. We can't pay the people
Pay the
who
bill.
are working. We can't make their pension contribution.
That's right.
We can't cover their health insurance. Whereas if they tighten their belt earlier, it might not be so bad.
John, I might add too, again, we're right in this election aspect of it. But some strange reason, seniors, whenever you get to that point where you're a senior citizen, you're either identified as a perennial or you're a little too old for it, right? I mean, we've seen it in regards to the national election that's going on right now, how they're basically treating seniors if they're running for office. They've got the wisdom aspect of it. But I'm coming back here about this property tax aspect of it. They played around with that for a bit. They were trying to give seniors a discount because they work so hard to get to the point that they can own their home. But under the guideline, the current guideline is that they're taxed also. In fact, many of them are losing their homes in many ways. Okay, it's a very serious problem that needs to be back at the table. And then again, like I said, if I'm mayor, I'm going to make sure that will be responded to. You come out with a big bond talking about education bill, I want to make sure we audit. We want to know where the money goes. And we will not tax any seniors during that particular time. We can't afford to. And then the other thing I might add is the same thing. You come out with this whole business about what Brown was talking about. Well, okay, fine. What we're going to do is that basically saying, okay, don't worry about if you're living in a place or you're renting or whatever in a house, you got to get a roof over your head. Don't worry about paying your rent bill. Jesus Christ. What about those seniors who work their butt off to try to offset some of that cost? And I brought that piece up because, wait a minute. So you're saying don't pay your rent, But what about the person who's picking up the rent? He's not putting in all of their pocket. They've got the one, if they're buying the house, you got to pay that particular bill. And then the other thing is that if they're dependent upon that revenue to pay some of their bills, trust me, guess what? They'll be out. So let's make sure that we're fair about this deal. And that's a sad situation. But my point is that you got to be knowledgeable about that. Again, I'm saying to those 19 people that are running for mayor, it's another thing that I'm trying to do here with Parkcraft and bringing people on like Don Lee to educate you. So in essence, you're in boot camp right now. I want to help everybody. As far as I'm concerned, we need a runoff. We need a runoff because right now, the way I've got it right now, I know for a fact I'm an inside kind of a guy. The media has already selected their mayor, Ted Wheeler. They've already selected him. So the other 18 people, and as far as I'm concerned, if you file to run for office, you've got an idea. They've got an idea. Give them the opportunity to express that what that idea is all about. Then we can go about changing maybe the criteria of the application form to make sure we get the kind of leadership that we want. We need a resume. They need resumes just to let people know. Or if not that, the idea and how do you respond to the idea. So that's a very important piece. It's really a sad note, but the only time I hear anything about the media is through CNN and Fox. I don't know which component talks about the fake news as much, but the bottom line, we've got the same concept here locally. Just need to get responsible people. You can't interview. You can't interview running for office. I've got a track record along that particular line. When I get interviewed, especially now, I've been interviewed. Yes, I've run for office, but every time I got interviewed, the person who's interviewing me has no background. They don't even know what the issues are. They have no solutions. So how can they interview me? I find myself educating them. Get all the stuff back and say, well, look here, check out my brochure. But they will not talk about that. But anyway, I just want to make sure that look, I want to let those folks who are running for office and to the people, you can't forget about it. There's no such thing as they don't have any back. No, if they filed to run for office, that's a major step. Give them the opportunity to articulate specifically how are they going to address the issues like John has been talking to with reference to how do we pay the bill? How do we pay the bill here in the state of Oregon, state of Washington, in this country, and the various levels of taxes and rent that you pay. I mean, that's where it's at, folks. So give us some leadership now. We need that. So I had to throw that in for these 19 people, including my dear friend Ted Wheeler, the young man. I can still remember when I was a good Marine recruiter, buddy. I mean, the guy might not have qualified because he really didn't meet the task of the day. But if I had interviewed him, he would have qualified, and he'd been going to boot camp. He'd been a solid dude today, but unfortunately, that happened. Okay, good. With that, John, the Rico, I didn't want to get on that particular stump. You know what I mean? But the fact of the matter is, just happened to, as I was getting ready for this particular interview with you, there was another interview that was on about one of the major channels, Steve Dean's show, the Steve Dean show. I call it Steve Dean, not Steve Dunn, Steve Dean show. And he had the so-called, they interviewed the so-called 4 top candidates running for mayor. Wow. No resumes. No resumes. And there they are talking about something. No background at all. Not a question that came up that says, what have you done? What have you built in your life? How many people have you employed? How much rent have you paid over the years and time that you've been? How many jobs have you had? Nothing along that particular line. And Ted was there just loving it, no tie on, just the whole 9 yards. And naturally they tried to, when they called me up and said, Bruce, we're going to be interviewing the other 15 candidates, but we want you guys to come to the studio, and we're going to give you some questions, and then you'll answer, and then we'll video you, and then we'll just put them on the tube. I say, hey, what are the questions? Oh, we can't share that with you now. When you get to the studio, then we'll tell you the question. Well, okay, I'll be there. No problem. Naturally, I didn't show up. But we're having it here, folks. Now we're on podcast. We're going to educate you and going to make sure we get the word out. That's why I want you to make sure you get to your friends in your area, and both in the state of Washington, up there where Camas is. We got an election going on right now. People are running for office. And matter of fact, I'm going to ask John, hey, look, we're going to interview some of those folks. We want to talk about them. We want to make sure that because we're in a crisis right now. We're in a crisis. We need top leadership, top leadership. And in fact, just to make sure you know who John is, I noticed that there's some folks that responded to his article that he did, and this one woman said, "Hey, look here, gee whiz, John, you got to get elected." He just laid it out. I'm just trying to tell you that I don't have. If a person can't handle the heat, they got to get out the kitchen on Oregon Voters Digest with Bruce Broussard. Trust me, okay? We're all in together. And I'm not saying this negative. I'm not being anti any of the folks that I've distracted. No. If you're running for office, I just want you to be serious and you bring something to the table. That's basically where I was coming from. John, this has been great. Well, how much more time do we have, timekeeper? 2.5 minutes. John, we're going to give you that last 2 minutes. Give us the last 2 minutes and take it with the close. Okay? Go on, John.
Well, buddy, I'll just tee up one little nugget. You touched on earlier about property taxes and how they're paying the man one way or another in a lot of areas. And earlier this January, our state legislators were holding a town hall for citizens here in the Camas area. And one of the stunning facts that was revealed was that because property taxes here in Washington state have gone through the roof, the city of Camas had the largest number of people losing their homes due to increased property taxes. And I suspect that was on a percentage basis of anywhere in the state of Washington. That's absolutely horrible.
Wow.
And if people can't pay it, sooner or later, government's going to come back and try and take that house away from them.
Exactly.
And that's why they need common sense folks that are fighting for them at the mayor, at the state legislature, on the city council, on the county council.
John, thank you very, very much. This is chapter 1 with John. John, I'm going to be seeing you here more often, okay? Be prepared, my friend, okay?
My pleasure. Semper Fi, buddy, and thanks for the good work you do and the word that you get out.
And Semper Fi to you, my brother, for serving this country. And now you're at a point in time where now we're the professors now, okay? Have a good one, John. Take care. See you next time. Again, back to what we believe in, as George Page said. Back to what you believe in. Okay? Have a good one.